And you'll see there on page 2, as we're thinking about our marriages, in one sense, like it'd be super simple. It's like just go love each other more. Like it is that simple, isn't it? And yet there's a verse in Philippians that has always been dear to my heart. The Philippians, lovely church, and Paul is praying for them that their love may abound more in knowledge and depth of insight, so that they may be able to discern what is best. Like get your head around that for a second. It's a lovely church, the Philippians. And he's saying, what I want for your love is for it to deepen in wisdom. Because actually, it's one thing to say, I really want to love the creature that God has put beside me in marriage, but actually it can be quite hard. And we know that as we read the scriptures, one of the things that we learn is, listen, we are born sinful and selfish, and part of coming to Christ and knowing the forgiveness that there is in Christ is growing in love. We're okay with that. We're born sinful and selfish, and so many of the problems that we have in marriage is just old-fashioned sin and selfishness. But we're not just born sinful; we're also born simple. You know, read the book of Proverbs, and the simple man who doesn't think about the future, doesn't see the problems, that doesn't know how the world works. That we're born both sinful and simple. And if we're going to put sin to death, we have to grow in love. But if we're going to grow out of being simple, we've got to grow in wisdom. I spend a lot of time with marriages that are in a bad old state. And listen, sometimes it is just good old-fashioned sin and selfishness. And yet sometimes you have two people who love the socks off each other and love God and are still ready to kill each other. And like, if I just knew what to do, I'd do it. And you know, it's never just one of them. That as we are going through life, we're trying to figure out how to put sin to death so we grow in love, but we're also trying to figure out how do we grow out of being simple to be the wise person that Proverbs talks about. And it's neither just one or the other. It's sin and simplicity that get in to make a mess of our relationships. And our hope and our prayer is that as we grow in the Christian life, we're growing in love, but we're also growing in wisdom. We're growing in a desire to be selfless and to see the other grow and flourish, but we're also going in wisdom where we understand the other. We understand what love looks like in the messy, everyday parts of who does the dishes. I don't know if you clocked, like there's no verse in Hezekiah chapter 3 that says who does the dishes. You got to work it out. And wisdom is figuring out, how do I live in this world through the lens of this word? And what we're going to be talking about this morning is a lot on that wisdom side. That when it comes to understanding who you are and the person that God has put beside you, what would it look like for us to develop in that depth of insight? You'll see Proverbs 20, verse 5. I don't know if you know that. I'd love you to get that verse like tattooed on your soul. The purposes of a person's heart are deep waters, but the one who has insight draws them out. The purposes of a person's heart are deep waters. You know, if you're standing in, just a pond that's a foot deep, you can see everything that's going on. You can see every fish, every little minnow. You can see every little rock and pebble on the bottom. You're on a fishing vessel on the great sea. You haven't got a clue what's going on in the depths of those seas. And Proverbs says the purposes of a person's heart, why we do the things that we do, is like looking into the deep waters. But it's not hopeless. Because Proverbs says, but the one who has insight draws them out. It is possible to peer into the depths of the human heart and to see why we do what we do. And so I don't know if you're not married, if you've been married for 50 years or more, or whether you've been married for a short time, and you're still getting to know each other. And actually trying to work out, I'm not just trying to get to know them, I'm trying to get to know why I do what I do. And so one of our hopes is that as we digest the scriptures and we apply them to life, that we're starting to learn to peer into those deep waters. I'd also love, as we try and explore this, to think about the tension between privacy and support. When I first started at the church I'm in, it was 14 years ago. I clocked it every year. There wasn't a year that was going by that pastorally there weren't marriage issues that I was working through. And we as a leadership decided, you know what, we're not gonna fix this by sort of crisis fighting fire every time something comes up. Wouldn't it be lovely to try and create a culture where it's okay to talk about stuff? And so we run days like this a fair bit, and it's less about, right, one day fixes everything, but actually it starts to create a culture like, oh my word, we're not the only ones. Maybe it's okay to talk. And it's possible that, I'm taking a guess here, if you're anything like the Republic of Ireland, a generation ago, what happened between those four walls stayed between those four walls. And a lot of pain and hurt happened between those four walls. And if there's a prayer for biblical churches, one of my hopes is that we start to talk to each other and realize we're not the only ones going through stuff. However, when you do that, you've got to make sure that you don't shame your spouse. Actually, if we're going to create a culture where it's okay to speak, I need to know that when my wife speaks, she can get support and she can get help and we can, but I need to know she's not going to shame me. And one of the reasons why you batten down the hatches and it stays between the four walls is because if you create a culture where actually you talk about absolutely everything without any discretion, eventually say it's just not safe to speak. Just lock it in. And so actually, it takes a fair bit of wisdom to figure out how do you create a culture where it's okay to talk, but you each know that the other will not shame them in front of their church family. And so I would be pleading with you. These one-off days, really often what they're about is just throwing a few things up in the air and saying, now go work them out, talk about them. But talk about them with discretion. There's a difference between secrecy and privacy. Do you know what I mean? I think in a generation gone by, what happened in marriage was secret. But the solution to secret is not just there's privacy, there's discretion, there's openness with respect of the person that you're married to. And so if you look at the next section, there was a lovely book here, Love and Respect. I really enjoyed that one. And it's fascinating that in every relationship, love and respect go together. Do you know John 17, the great high priestly prayer where God the Son is praying to God the Father? And there's this amazing picture that the Son glorifies the Father and the Father glorifies the Son. Within the Godhead, there is this seeking the glory of the other. And then there's the beautiful verse halfway through 17 where it says how God the Father loved the Son before the creation of the world. That the Son loves the Father and the Father loves the Son. And because they love each other, they seek the glory of each other. Now, even forget about marriage for a second. Even in parenting, isn't that a lovely picture? Imagine two parents that sought the honor of each other in the eyes of their children. Like that picture within the Godhead is precious. And you see it with God and his people, where we're to love God and honor God. And Isaiah 43, God loves and honors his people. They go together. You see it in Romans 12, where as Paul is exhorting them to be a community, he's saying, love each other, honor each other. And then you get the verse in Ephesians 5 that we're going to camp out a little bit on this morning that says this. However, each one of you must also love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. Love and respect have got to go together. But I want to throw out that it's at least interesting that Paul says to the wives, love your husbands. And he says to the husbands, to the wives, respect your husbands. And to the husbands, love your wife. That's at least interesting. And one of the things that comes out as you read Scripture is both the equality and the difference between men and women. If you've got your Bibles and you're able to flick to Galatians, where Paul is talking to these Christians, and he's at his wit's end to say the equality there is of everyone who is in Christ. We're not only made in God's image, we're equally made in God's image, we're equally fallen in Adam, and we're equally redeemed in Christ. Where Paul in Galatians 3, picking up at verse 23, where he's talking about how precious faith is, and the law led us to Christ. We're no longer under the supervision of the law. Then verse 26, you are all sons of God through faith in Christ Jesus. For all of you who are baptized into Christ have clothed yourselves with Christ. And there is neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male nor female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. If you belong to Christ, then you're Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. He couldn't be clearer. Doesn't matter what background you're from. Doesn't matter what gender you are. Doesn't matter what creed you. In Christ, we are all equal. We are absolutely, preciously equal to God. And yet the same lad, Paul, who wrote Galatians 3, also wrote Ephesians 5. Flick over, if you will, Ephesians 5, where you get this glorious picture of the relationship between the husband and the wife being a shadow, like a little image of the mysterious relationship between Christ and the church. And as he go down and he's saying that the husband is the head of the wife, and there are these different roles, and he finishes with that verse of each of you must also love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. The same lad who wrote Galatians 3 and said you're absolutely all equal also said you're also significantly different. Beautifully equal and beautifully different. And listen, I think the first time I did a marriage seminar was about 13 years ago. And I can remember reading that and thinking, gosh, it's almost a wee bit strange to say that in society. Let me tell you, 13 years later, if I said that on the streets of Carrickmacross, I'd be treated like a madman. Like, how that has changed so quickly is unreal. And I'm guessing it's not too different here. That to say in our society that men and women are beautifully equal and beautifully different to our core is astounding that it is controversial, but hugely controversial it is. And actually it's quite dangerous. If two things are not the same but equal, it's quite dangerous to treat them the same. Gavin was saying his daughter's getting to driving stage. Mine's not quite there. I have her driving the lawnmower, and it's enough. It's enough. Do you know, in Ireland, when I'll come to get her insured, do you know the insurance companies aren't allowed to ask her gender? Do you know what the problem with that is? Like, we boys, we drive different, we crash different, we claim different. And the one area that the insurance company isn't allowed to ask is, what sex are you? Who's going to suffer for that? It's the women. Because who's going to have to make up the premium of us fellas who crash our cars? Actually, we're not the same. And if you treat us the same, someone's going to suffer. I used to be a secondary school teacher. Kids are not the same. You try and treat them all the same, and you will see them wither. You ever read 1 Corinthians 12? You know, some of you are an eye and some of you are an ear. If you think that everybody should be an eye, then ears grow up thinking they're blind. Things can be equal and different, and if you treat things that are equal and different the same, you're going to get in big trouble. I want to throw out that the differences between men and women are not absolute, but they are significant. And the differences between men and women are like broad brushstrokes. I'd be willing to bet, listen, if I asked all the men and all the women in this room, how many friends have you got? I don't mean how many people that you know and meet up with once a year. I'm like, how many friends do you have that you meet up to chat? Generally speaking, ladies have more friends. I bet if I lined you all up to arm wrestle your partners, generally, statistically speaking, the husbands are going to outdo the wives. Is that absolute? Oh my word. I have met wives who would whoop their husbands every day of the week and twice on Sundays. Okay? That doesn't make them less. In fact, some of those men are the greatest men I know. But generally speaking, there are broad brushstrokes, differences between how men and women interact in this world. Now, one mistake is to say those differences are absolute and it's different for every man and every woman. Nonsense. But the other mistake is to say there's absolutely no difference. There are broad brushstroke differences that are really helpful to spot, but not to become prisoned by them. And some of the things that we will describe will resonate more with men or with women, but it is still useful to see there are broad brushstrokes that are at least useful to clock when you're dealing with men and dealing with women. I want to throw out this love and respect. They've got to go together. But if we're going to unlock some of the things in our marriages, it's good to see that something can be two sides of the same coin. Love and respect, two sides of the same coin. You cannot have one without the other. And yet it is possible that one side is to the front, or the other side is to the front. And actually that can change hugely how you see the world and how you relate to people. You'll see a story on page 3. Listen, you're going to have to do some work today, okay? And you're going to be talking to the people beside you. Don't move now if you've chosen badly. They will see you. I don't necessarily want you to chat to the person that you're married to. It'd be lovely to mix it up a bit. So if you do want to move around, please do. In fact, you know, if there are a few groups of just fellas, and I'd be fascinated to see if you come up with different stuff. So, like chatting 3s or 4s or whoever is around you. Don't just stay in the couples. I'm going to read this story. It is a story, and listen, we're going to be doing a few stories today. My deal with all of these is either they are all anonymized. But either these are people who I've asked, can I use the story in this sort of format, or they are composites of stories that are so familiar, I wouldn't even know it's just painfully common. This one is painfully common. Okay? And I'd love to read it out. And then I'm going to give you 7 minutes to talk in your 2s, 3s, 4s, whatever it is around you. And listen, I don't want you to solve anything just now. I would just love you to spot what's going on. What happened there? Oh, actually, see whenever he said that or she did that or this happened? And just don't try and solve it. Just try and spot what's going on. So let me pick it up on page 3. This is Michael and Sarah. They've been married 7 years, got 3 kids, and moving house to a new area. Michael runs his own small business. Sarah looks after the kids and works part-time as a nurse. Michael started up the new business 2 years ago at the same time that they had their 3rd child. After the birth, Sarah went through a period of depression. Michael was very busy with the business and struggled to emotionally support Sarah. When Sarah was down, he tried to cheer her up, but he often ended up making her feel worse. He couldn't fix her, but he made sure to provide for her. Despite the pressure at home, he wanted to make the business work. But Sarah felt she was abandoned by Michael. Michael thought he was doing everything he could to care for his family, but never really knew how to help Sarah emotionally. She's feeling better now, but there's tension in the marriage. An estate agent is showing them around a new house, but it seems that it's just outside of their buying power. Sarah jokingly says to the estate agent, "This is just like my dream house." But that's all it is, a dream. Michael would have to make a lot more money from his business for us to take on this house. Let's set with something smaller. Michael forces a smile. Sarah goes for a job interview, and Michael offers to take a day off work to look after the youngest child. Sarah gets the job as a part-time nurse. When she comes home, toys are everywhere in a mess. Michael didn't put the kid down for a nap. Michael and the child are outside giggling, playing in the mud, which she knows is going to set off the child's eczema. Sarah goes to the back garden to meet them. "Michael, what are you doing? I told you he's got sensitive skin. I thought you said you wanted to help me today." I have been helping. All I ever do is try to help you." "Really? Who's going to have to tidy up all the toys when you go out later? Who's going to have to listen to the whinging for the next 3 hours because you forgot about the nap? Who's going to be up all night with our child who's crying because their skin's itchy again? It's impossible to win with you." "No, Michael, very easy to win with me. Just try thinking of someone other than yourself." Sarah's now back at work part-time when they are all at home in the evening. "Michael, I need to clear up the kitchen, get the laundry done, and do packed lunches for tomorrow. Would you mind giving the kids a bath?" "Okay, let me just finish sending these work emails, and I'll get it sorted." "So, sorry to be interrupting your real work. You know, I would just love a bit of help around the house. I do the dishes, the laundry, the bedtime routine. Wouldn't it be something if just once, you offered to help instead of always being asked?" Later, they sit down together on the sofa after all the kids have been put to bed. "I'm just so exhausted. I've been back at work for a month now and I still come home exhausted." "Might be worth trying to get to bed earlier. You stay up late and then the kids wake you. No one could survive on that little sleep." "Maybe. Anyway, I'm running off my feet at the ward at the minute. It's not just dealing with the patient's physical problems. Often they're lonely and they just need someone to talk to. Often I end up chatting with them about their fears and worries, and then I need to work through my lunch break to catch up. I wonder, could you have a chat with the hospital chaplain? I mean, I'd say he'd love to help out with that kind of work. It would take pressure off you a bit. Maybe. Anyway, listen, it doesn't matter. I don't want to talk about it." "Why? What have I done?" You're a terrible listener. You always interrupt. You never actually understand how I'm feeling." Later, they sit and watch some TV together. Michael calms down. Sarah is quietly frustrated. Michael gives her a kiss and suggests that they don't go to sleep just yet. Sarah smiles, says she's too tired for sex. It would be good just to get an early night. Michael's business has been growing. He's worked late nights, but gets so engrossed in the work that he sometimes forgets to call home to tell Sarah that he'll be late for dinner. It's the 3rd time in 1 week he hasn't called home. Thanks for finally gracing us with your presence. For a second there, I thought you'd forgotten you had a family. It wasn't my fault. Things were busy at work. I couldn't get away. I know it's hard to get away from the things you really love. Okay, listen, there's no point fighting with each other. I'm off to bed. I'll see you in the morning. Well, that's what's best for you. You better do it. Why change the habit of a lifetime? I haven't settled in church yet, but Sarah's been talking to some friends she's made at a local church about some of the things she's struggling with in marriage. They're encouraging her to pray about it, read her Bible, and connect more with folk at church to get spiritual support. I've been chatting to some of our friends about our struggles, and I think it'd be great for us to get some help. How about we start going to their church? Maybe, yeah. I mean, things are busy at the minute, but when work calms down, we could think about that. That's just your way of saying no. You say you want this marriage to work, that you want to be a spiritual leader, but we hardly go to church. I've never seen you read your Bible. We haven't prayed together in 3 years. Fine. We'll go to church. They go to church, on and off for the next year. But Michael stays on the edge. The business is keeping Michael busy, and he needs Sarah's help with some practical things. Do you think this Saturday you could come into the office with me and run your eye over some of the accounts? You're much better at the figures than I am. To be honest, it's been a hard week with the kids and with work. I just can't face the thought of leaving the house. On Friday night, the pastor of the church calls Sarah to ask for her help setting up for the coffee morning on Saturday. But she'd need to be in for 7:30. Sarah jumps at the chance. Sarah's known for a long time that Michael's more distant. She wants to try and fix things. Michael, I love you. It's just not working. I want it to work. But you're never here. You never want to talk. You don't spend time with the kids. I feel like I'm on my own. I feel like I don't have a husband. What do you want me to say? Verbal argument starts. Michael walks out of the house to clear his head. 3 more years pass. Michael has employed a financial bookkeeper to help with his expanding business. She's about his age. He doesn't find her as attractive as Sarah, but despite that, they start a relationship together. Sarah's losing hope in her marriage. There's a single man at church who's sympathetic and listens to her struggles, but she remains faithful to Michael. Sarah finds out about Michael's affair and divorces him. She keeps in touch with the single man from church, and 18 months later, they start a relationship. Oh, you exhausted? Breaks your heart, doesn't it? I'd love you just for, let's take 7-8 minutes, just with people beside you, and just what do you see? Because I want you to clock, like, these guys opted into this marriage. They loved each other. And something happened where they're just gone. Have a wee think, have a wee play, and then I'd love to hear your thoughts. So have a chat, and then in 7-8 minutes we'll come back and bounce it around together. I'd love to hear what you've made of Michael and Sarah. So just, again, please, don't solve it for me, don't fix it for me, just what did you notice? Where were there moments where there was like, oh, something happened there? Fires out some thoughts. There's plenty. The financial pressure, yeah. Yeah, you saw that with the house buying, yeah.
Different expectations.
Yeah, of what?
How a man fixes a problem and how a woman fixes a problem.
Absolutely, yeah. That's good.
Huge pivotal things happening in their life. You know, she had just given birth to her third child.
Yes.
She suffered depression. He's trying to start a business. He's got all the stresses of that. So it was
young family
house, which is a really stressful thing. So it was such a big thing.
Birth of a child, start of a business, moving house, all thrown in together. Yeah.
It seems like from the very beginning, both of them are working extremely hard for the other one and for the joint effort of their family, but neither one are seeing or interpreting that as love.
Love it.
So he is really kind of doing everything he can
Yeah.
for her to meet her needs,
Yeah.
and it misses the target. And she's doing everything she can at home to maintain family, etc., and that misses the target.
Yes.
So much effort
So much.
that neither of them are actually
So much effort.
gaining from that
Yeah. And so much love. And go ahead, Jim.
Well, we were just saying that very early on resentment starts on both sides.
Yeah.
And from that place of resentment, they've stepped back, and that is then colouring every single decision. They're fighting their own corner of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we also said that it stems from right at the beginning, they're not communicating. So he's doing everything he thinks he needs to do to provide for his family, but she's not telling him that that's not what she needs. Then she gives a throwaway comment to the estate agent that might disrespect him, but he doesn't tell her that he feels disrespected.
Totally.
And then it just snowballs from there.
Love it.
They don't seem to be encouraging each other either. It's all negative.
Yeah. And this funny thing of they're not encouraging each other, and yet they are working for each other. They are trying to love each other, but there's something about the communication of it where they're not feeling encouraged. Yeah?
Defined roles. Their roles are not really defined through everything they're doing, so it's not knitting together.
Yeah, yeah. They're trying to negotiate it through the lens of resentment. That actually, if they were in a better place, they could negotiate some of that stuff, but there's something eating away. Yeah, go ahead, John.
Well, they neglected their sex life,
Yeah,
and a physical relationship together, and that opened the door for temptation to come in, and
gosh.
it's so important.
So, yeah, that never got resolved. There's lots in this story that never got resolved. And here's the thing. Are Michael and Sarah horrible, nasty people? If you met them, they are just lovely and they love each other. If you had to use a word to describe Sarah and a word to describe Michael in terms of how they're operating within the marriage, is it selfish? There's some of that. I think she's hurt. I think he's clueless. I don't think he's trying to hurt her. I don't think he's got a clue. I think she's hurt. And does some of that show as selfishness? Yeah. But if you were going to talk to Michael and Sarah, like, what is it they need? Is it that Michael needs to love her more and work harder? He's doing that in the way that he thinks should help, and it makes it worse. And should you just say to her, you just have to love your husband? But she's hurt. And she doesn't know, can I actually entrust myself to him? And I'd love us to play around that, of course there's selfishness in there. Of course there is. But I'd love to pick up on the wisdom thing. Wouldn't you love it if they could just understand each other a little bit better? If you're there on page 6, I'd love to play with this idea of we are created equal and we're created different. And if there's a phrase I'd love us to hold on to, it's the differences between men and women, not the sameness, that cause both the tension and the delight. It's the differences between men and women, not the sameness, that cause both the tension and the delight. That when it's working well together, the differences just make it better. It's better than the sameness. And we should expect that. We have a Trinitarian God, don't we, that loves unity in diversity. It's the differences that cause the delight, but it's those same differences that cause the tension. And if we could just get a little window into, well, just how different are we? We're not different species, but we are significantly different. And there's a few things I'd love us to work through. You'll see there on page 6. And some of the differences in in how we're wired. So I want you to imagine any relationship you have, any friendship you have, if you're going to get close to someone, there's two things going on. It's like, the closer I get, the better the connection. You know what I mean? You know, if you stand off like this, you know, you have acquaintances and whatever else, but you don't have, you don't have good, solid friends or good, solid connection with your spouse or whatever it is in church, whatever it is. If you stand off, you're never going to get that close connection. But if you do get close, you can get hurt. It's why betrayal hurts more than the lashes of an enemy. And so there's two things. If you're going to have a connection with someone, you've got to figure out, how do I maximize the connection? How do I get close to them? But how do I also minimize the vulnerability? How do I protect myself? Because not everyone's safe. And every single one of us, although you don't know we're doing it, are making those little calculations in our head. How do I maximize how close I am, and how do I minimize how vulnerable I am? And what your clock is, who'd have thought, men and women do this slightly differently. Broad brushstrokes. Not every man and not every woman, but broad brushstrokes. It is noticeable how different that is in men and in women. Have you come across, it was back in the 90s, we know what intelligence is, IQ tests. Did you ever come across Daniel Goleman and the emotional intelligence, the EQ? That sort of really took off in the 90s. It's fascinating. I don't know if he could have written that stuff today in the same way, because one of the things that he says is, do you know what? When it comes to emotional intelligence, men and women are really quite different. Who'd have thought? They did this research. I don't know, every time I think about it, it just makes me laugh, where they wanted to know how far back do these differences go. So they went into schools and asked, could they have permission to just watch the kids? And they said, we really saw it in the playground. He said, we watched how the boys played and we watched how the girls played. And they said, every school we went to, these were broad brushstrokes. It wasn't true of every girl and every boy, but broad brushstrokes, this is what happened. So picture the scene there. You're out in the playground and the girls are, do you know the skippy rope? They still did that in the 90s, right? They did the skippy rope. And there's a heap of girls around, and the one who's doing the skipping, she falls and cuts her knee. In your mind's eye, what happens? Okay, here's what happens. The skipping rope goes down. The girls gather around the girl with the bleeding knee, and they cluck around her and take her into teacher. And teacher sits her down, and they're all around, and she's crying, and they're all, you're okay. And teacher ends up shooing them away because they're all sort of round her like chickens. And the teacher bandages it up, and then with her best friend sends her back out to the playground. And then they're back in the playground, and she'll be given a seat to sit on to watch. And then the skipping rope gets picked up, and they start playing. Same school, football pitch. Okay, boys are playing. Kid goes down with similar level injury, bleeding knee. In your mind's eye, what happens? Boy falls down, same injury, starts crying, same crying. You know what happens? He's told once, get up. If he doesn't, here's what will happen. 3 boys will pick him up, move him to the sideline, drop him, and play on. And if he's got a really good friend, and I mean a really good friend, the really good friend will come over and say, stop yapping before they see you. And they'll play on. And Daniel was looking at these and saying, boys and girls, really different. And for girls, more comfortable making a really close connection and being vulnerable. I'll cry my eyes out in front of you, and you'll come and help me, and we'll be vulnerable together, and we'll move on together. Fellas, better at not being vulnerable, less good at making the connection. I do these seminars sometimes in a residential conference where people are there for like 3 days. And I remember doing this on the first day, and then in the afternoon, all the parents and kids went off to do sports. And I sat down at the evening meal, and this lady came up to me, and they'd spent an hour playing basketball with all the women and all the girls. And she came up and she said, Colin, we had 60 minutes of game time. We only played 20 because the girls kept falling down and hurting their knee. And I only realized afterwards we only get 20 minutes of basketball because we stopped every time to see if they were okay. And I am not joking, she left, and then one of the dads came over. They said, we just spent an hour playing football. We played the full hour. And there were 8-year-old boys and 9-year-old boys sitting on the sidelines crying their eyes out while all we dads played. We haven't changed. And there's something in us that we are wired slightly different. We all want relationships. But it takes two parts. You've got to minimize the vulnerability and maximize the connection. And it turns out, generally, broad brushstrokes, not true for every lady and every fella, but generally, what will be at the foreground for a lady is to maximize connection. And minimizing vulnerability is in the background. We will be open and vulnerable with each other. But for fellas, it's the other way around. I'm going to make sure I minimize vulnerability. And in doing so, I'll make the best connection I can, but I'm going to minimize vulnerability. And you're like, well, which is better? Like, which is better? I hope we're going to land on they are both amazing in different contexts. See if you're in a family that's safe and they love each other. What do you want to be to the foreground? Maximize connection. This is a safe place. You don't have to watch your back here. You can be open. You can be vulnerable. You go into a hostile, competitive environment full of conflict. Do you want someone who is just vulnerable and allows themselves to be torn to shreds? Or do you want to be able to maximize the connection but minimize the vulnerability? Do you know my work involves two different types of stuff? One of my jobs is to work with individuals and couples who are going through tough stuff. One of my other jobs is to work with leaders who are training and mentoring. See, when I'm over here, I'm saying, would you learn to be open, please? See, when I'm working with leaders who are often working in hostile environments full of conflict, it's like, would you please learn to be tough? Would you learn to let comments be water off a duck's back? Because if you take everything to heart, you're going to get chewed up and spat out. People ain't going to drop the skipping rope for you. Now, do you know what would be lovely? Is if we knew when to do which. Because do you know what the hard thing is? I work with leaders who are made of Teflon. And they come home and can't be open with their wives. I work with folk who are so open and vulnerable in home, and they go out into the workplace and they're chewed up and spat out. Wouldn't it be amazing if we could learn from each other? That we could learn when to say, this is a safe place, I'm going to be vulnerable. And when to say, actually, this is a place of conflict and hostility, and I need to be resilient. And we've got to learn from each other. But I don't know if you've clocked. Who do you think is going to do this better in marriage? It's not me. We fellas, we start behind the curve. Have you noticed in that story, Sarah's hurt, he's clueless. That's often the way it is. Not always. Sometimes you get highly emotionally intelligent men. Happens. But generally speaking, she's going to be hurt and he's going to be clueless. Not all the time, but more often than you would wish. And wouldn't it be beautiful if we could learn from each other? And we could learn how to be more than one thing. Our wiring is different. And because our wiring is different, we go through life like developing different sets of skills because of the way that we operate in the world. I want you to picture the different types of skills we have. So we celebrated 21 years married there back in August. My wife's a very patient woman. We've made it to 21 years. When we first got married, I had moved jobs. So for the first time since I was 17, I wasn't driving a car because the house we now lived in was right beside where I worked, was right beside where we went to church, was right beside the shops. For 6 months, it's the only 6 months of my life since I was 17 that I wasn't driving a car. Now, I don't know what sort of family you're from. The sort of family I grew up in, when you buy a car, it has, what's the word? Character. It's a few years old. We love our second-hand cars. You can squeeze a lot out of them, and Scrapman's never too far away. But as with every 17-year-old kid, when I learned to drive a car, you have a conversation with your dad where he says, listen, there's more to owning a car than driving it. You got to take care of it. You got to listen to it. If you listen, the car will speak without words. You've got to feel any changes in the car. You've got to listen to the sounds. You've got to smell. Is that burning rubber? Is that burning oil? Because it matters. If you listen, the car will talk to you. And so I was fairly newly married. I had this wonderful Hyundai accent. I was living in England at the time, and my joke was always, there's only one thing better than a Hyundai accent, and that's an Irish accent. It never got old, right? This little Hyundai accent was my pride and joy, and for 6 months, I didn't drive it, and my wife was traveling to the next town to work. And so I entrusted my baby to my wife, right? I'm not joking. 6 months later, we went out for a drive in the car and I was driving. We got to the bottom of the street and I pulled over. And I looked at my wife and said, sweetheart, catch me up. What happened? She's like, Colin, what are you talking about? The car, what happened? When did this start? She's like, Colin, the car is fine. I start the car every morning. I drive to work. It gets me there fine. I drive it home. It's fine. I'm like, sweetheart, can you not feel that? Can you not hear that? Can you not smell it? This car has been talking to you and you're not listening. This car just needs a wee bit of sympathy, a wee bit of compassion. You're driving it into the ground. How could you be so cruel? The back suspension was broken, the bearing was gone, one of the tires was bald, it was about to blow, the alternating belt was on its last legs. I was like, sweetheart, you're not a bad person. You're better than this. And she was like, I don't have a clue what you're talking about. Like, how can you not see? A couple of months later, we were going to a friend's house for a party, and I knew the guy better than she did. And the guy, let's call him John, had been through some pretty tough stuff. And on the way, we were wonder how John's doing. And I was like, well, I'm gonna find out. And so we were at the party, and John was busy. He was hosting. He was doing all this stuff. And towards the end, I got him alone. I was like, John, how you doing? And we had a chat. And so on the way home, my wife Tanya goes, wonder how John's doing. I said, wonder no more. I talked to him. He's doing fine. She said, what makes you say that? I said, well, I went and I talked to him. I asked him how he was doing. She said, what did he say? He said he was fine. And she looked at me. I still see it with this mixture of sort of compassion and sympathy and contempt. She said, I don't think he's fine. I'm like, what? Did you talk to him? No, I didn't talk to him, but did you notice he never stopped once to talk to anyone? He was doing something the whole time. Do you remember when Angela made that joke and everybody laughed? And he laughed like 5 seconds after everyone? Because he wasn't even there, but he just saw everyone laughing. Did you see that even when he poured the tea, he didn't look anyone in the eye? And I'm sitting looking at her thinking, what are you talking about? Like, I asked him the question, and he said he was fine. What's all this tea talk about? Do you think he was fine? That boy was not fine. Now, isn't it amazing that John never said about all his struggles, but she could see it. And she's utterly blind to the torture she's putting my Hyundai accent through. That I can hear any little rumble in that car and know it needs some tender, loving care. And she can see any little rumble in his heart and know he needs some tender, loving care. Which is better? Don't we need each other? Like, if it wasn't for Tanya, I'd have no friends. If it wasn't for me, everything would be broken. But isn't that a decent team? But if I expect her to care for my car the way it should be, I'm going to be constantly disappointed. If she expects me to see with her X-ray vision all that she sees, she is going to be bitterly disappointed. Turns out we're different. And it's not just that we're wired different, and it's not just that we develop different skills. The way we see the world is so different. And the currency that we operate, what values to me. Now again, we're talking broad brushstrokes. And a wee bit later, I'd like to talk about when these broad brushstrokes, actually they don't line up. But for a minute, let's just take them as broad brushstrokes. That actually the currency that we see with, that we see the world, what values to us, is slightly different. And I'd love you to pick up that idea of love and respect. Sarah's hurt. And she just wants to know why he wasn't there for her when she really needed him. She wants to know the reason. Is it because he's a selfish pig? It's not. But she doesn't know that. And she just needs to know she's loved. And if he had a wee bit of clue about him, he'd be able to sit him down and talk. It's not about being able to fix her. It's about her being able to understand, where were you when I needed you? Okay? That she sees things through the glasses of love. He sees things through a different set of glasses. He sees things through the glasses of respect. Imagine this. Imagine his business grew a fair bit more, and he took on a secretary, and he took on a pile of employees, and the marriage was getting worse and worse. And say Sarah was getting to know some of these lovely folk at church, and the resentment is just growing and growing, the hurt is just growing, and she's just getting, I'm just done with him. He's spending more and more time at work, less and less time at home. And so she goes for, imagine she's in the Bridge Cafe with one of her lovely Christian friends, and she's telling about how rubbish Michael is, and he's never around, and he never comes home, and he never talks to her, and she's sick to death, and her friend is like, you deserve better. You go tell him that you deserve better. And so she's like, do you know what? I'm going to go tell him. And so she goes to his workplace across the town, and she's coming in hot. She's ready to unleash with everything that Michael has done wrong, right? And she gets into the reception area, and she's about to storm into the sort of conference area where Michael is, when all of a sudden the secretary heads her off at the pass and says, Sarah, it's happening now. She's like, what's happening now? Secretary's like, the big meeting's happening now. Listen, he'll be out in a minute and he'll tell you all about it, but would you just wait in the waiting area for him? He'll be out soon. And so Sarah sits in the waiting area and she's going through A, B, C, D. I'm going to unleash on him whenever he comes out. I'm going to tell him what a terrible husband he's been, and it's just like having another child in the house, and I'm sick of it, and he has to do better. And she's sitting waiting, and she's waiting for 5 minutes, and she's sitting with the stew, and then all of a sudden the door opens. And out come half a dozen men and women, and the last person out is Michael. And one of the fellas who's an older man who carries himself with dignity goes up to Michael and shakes his hand and says, "Sir, no one else could have done for the company today what you did. Thank you, sir." Now she's sitting in the waiting room, being stewing, ready to tell him off like a child. And she sees two other people. She sees the older man who calls her husband sir. Do you know who else she sees? The secretary that's getting a front row seat to her husband winning. The secretary who day in, day out sees him at his best. Do you know what glasses he looks through the world in? Glasses of respect. Do you know where he will spend most of his time? Whether he should or should not, he will spend most of his time where he is respected most. Do you know why it is a stereotypical story as old as the sun that the boss sleeps with the secretary? Not because she's more attractive, because she gets a front row seat to him at his best. And if he comes home and that's him at his worst, if he comes home and he's the incompetent one, he will find more and more and more reasons to stay at work. You see, we see with different glasses. There is a reason the affairs happened the way that they did. Who did she go for? Someone who listened. Who'd love her enough to understand her. Who did he have an affair with? Was it the attractive blonde that he saw in the bar? No. It was the lady who got a front row seat and saw him day in, day out, doing what he's good at. And for men and women, we got to love each other. But if we're going to love each other, we got to understand we see the world with different glasses. And what she wants is to be loved and respected. And what he wants is to be respected and loved. Both, always, together, have to go together. But one's in the forefront and one's in the background. Wives, if I want to make friends with your husband, do you know how I do it? I ring him up and say, I've got a problem, I need your advice. We're best buddies. Because I paid him the ultimate compliment. I respect you enough to go to you. I spent a lot of time working with clergy leaders. Do you know what one of the things that clergy leaders really struggle with in marriage? Is that whenever they leave the front door, there's a queue of people asking for their wisdom. And when they come home, there is no queue. And if their wisdom is dismissed, where do you think they spend most of their time? Whether they should or shouldn't. that it's at least useful to clock. We know what unconditional love is. We know that if we're gonna love someone, we have to treasure them and show they're precious and spend time with them. One thing that we in our culture have probably lost is, what does unconditional respect look like? What does it look like to respect him even when he drops the ball? Do you know, I once did this, my brother's a missionary in Nigeria. I once did this marriage material in Nigeria. It was totally different. And I sat with a bunch of men and women, and we talked about love and respect, and the room went silent. I said, what have I said? Listen, I'm Irish, I don't know what I've said. What have I said? And one of the brave ladies stood up and said, the wives of these men treat them as kings. And these men treat their wives as servants. I said, a brave lady, thank you. Now, they knew what respect was, but what about the Christ-like sacrificial love that lays down your life for your wife? And the thing I love about Scripture is, whatever culture we're from, it speaks to us. And when I speak of this in a Western culture, it's the respect one. Is like, really? Is that a thing? Because we're quite good on the love thing. Except if love is the same for everyone, it doesn't land. Not if we're different. And we are different. And from that creates two different types of struggle. You'll see on page 7, it's not just that our currency is different, our struggle is different. In terms of folk who've done like the most sort of long-range research on marriage and divorce, probably the Gottman Institute has done the longest sort of studies. They've sort of tracked from married to what's 40 years down the line look like, and how long do marriages last, and what's the secret sauce, and what goes wrong. John Gottman and his wife Julie would sort of head that institute, and they're just amazing on just watching, on research. They did a study where they just sat and watched and observed and looked for certain things to see how predictable divorce was. I think they clocked 4 negative things that if they're present, and 1 positive thing if it's absent. They reckon divorce is on the horizon within 5 years. And they tried it out. I think they hit over 90% accuracy. It was scary, right? It's like, well, what are those things? And the 4 negative things that he said, if they're there, you really got to worry. He called them the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And what he said was interesting because it was slightly different for men and women. And he said, when you sit down and watch, just watch how the interaction, particularly over a squabble. And you'll see at the top of page 7 there. Criticism is like, what you did was lazy. Contempt is you are lazy. So criticism is you've done something bad. Contempt is you are something bad. And what he said is if that runs through a conversation, this criticism and contempt, that what that does for women is very different from what it does to men. And he said, actually, when someone like Sarah is really struggling with the resentment, she wants to fix it. And she'll go towards Michael to try and fix it. You're doing this wrong. You're a bad husband. Change your ways. And she's actually starting to feel better because there's now hope. I'm trying to fix it. I'm trying to bring resolution. Okay, so she was struggling, and she steps forward to try and fix it. Do you know what that criticism and contempt does to him? It's called the red mist. It's like rational thought stops. And what he does is he defends himself. And if that doesn't work, then he withdraws. Now, I don't know if you clocked. Did you see whenever you read the story of Michael and Sarah, who was more articulate? I wasn't even close, was it? Like, she is a verbal ninja. Like, he is, honestly, he is, at one point, what do you want me to say? Like, if that was a boxing match, the referee would throw in the towel. That's not fair. Okay, she is tearing you to bits. Now, you got a clock. Men and women argue differently. I grew up as one of 3 brothers. I have 3 daughters. It's unreal, right? Because I would do something to my brother and he would punch me. And we'd have a fight, and then we'd shake hands and get on with it. My girls, there's times where I'm listening to it, it's like, the yapping, the articulation, how they can formulate these attacks is unreal. And they'll go at each other, and then they'll hurt each other, and then they'll talk through, I didn't mean that, blah, 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 and they'll make friends. Okay? We have not experienced that. Okay, so when a fella is being attacked, what that means in the playground is fisticuffs. You can't do that with your wife. So what do? She's attacking me. Why is she attacking me? I love this woman. And so you try and defend yourself and say, I'm not the idiot you think I am. And then she runs rings around him, and what does he do? He walks away. Now, just for a second, picture the playground. And 2 boys are squaring up, and one walks away. That is the height of humiliation. You've just backed down. Now, what he's doing is, I don't want to fight this woman. She's coming at me like a lioness. I have no idea. I love her to bits. She's mad, but I love her. I'll do the honorable thing. I'll fall on my sword. I'll walk away. Do you know what that does to her? Remember, she was upset. She wants to fix things, so she goes at him and starts to feel better. And actually, in the verbal argument, she's doing okay. She is sharp. She is clear. She is boom, boom, boom. And then he walks away. And she was like, we were fixing it. And you. And as he walks out the door, Hope walks out the door with him. Now, here's the crazy thing. When he goes for a wee walk around the park, do you know what happens to him? He calms. And he's like, I love her. She loves me. It'll be fine. We'll shake hands. Done. What's she doing while he's walking the park? There is a cauldron with a lid welded on that is about to pop, right? She had Hope. She was going at him. We can fix this. He left. He took Hope with him. He does not care enough to fix this relationship. So he walks around the park, gets himself back in order, thinks this is going to be fine, walks in the door. What happens? Boom! And he's like, so what does he do? He walks out again. Obviously, I didn't walk long enough. This time I'll do 2 laps of the park. What's happening to her? The very thing that helps her, getting it out of her system, sends him mad. The very thing that helps him walk away sends her mad. And so when he comes back, what happens? We go round, round, until... Did you notice what happened with Michael? What do you want me to say? He is never going to win the verbal argument. He hasn't practiced it. And so he walks away. And in doing so, sends her crazy. Here's the thing. She just wants to fix it. She just wants to know, Michael, can I trust you? Are you my man? Or were you not there for me back then because I didn't matter enough to you? Because if I didn't matter enough to you then I probably don't matter. Just tell me that I matter enough to... That's all she wants. And she is hurt. And her pain is matched only by his cluelessness. He's a good man. who doesn't know what to do with her. She's a good woman who's been hurt by a clumsy man. Not a horrible man, not a vindictive man, but a man who doesn't know how to handle a lady. And he's been hurt. She's been hurt. And does it not break your heart? And we see the world through these different glasses, and every time we go at a conflict, we end up making it worse. And so what I'd love us to look at is, how do we fight better? How do we fight in a way that makes things better rather than worse? Because there is no chance we get through marriage without hurting each other. There's no chance we get through marriage without being a bit clueless. So how do we talk in a way that makes it better, not worse? Should we grab some coffee?